In the early 1960s, many thousands of children in numerous countries all over the world were born with absent or deformed arms and legs, a condition known as phocomelia. Many of these children would pass away in the first few weeks due to severe gastrointestinal abnormalities and frequent malformations of their internal organs. Individuals who avoided this fate were frequently abandoned by their shocked and perplexed parents and would subsequently experience incredibly tough lives. The cause? A touted new miracle drug, thalidomide. The Swiss business, chemical industry Basel, was developing a novel animal tranquilizer at the beginning of the 1950s. Their goal? To create a medication that would be less dangerous than barbiturates. They created thalidomide during the research in 1953, but chemical industry Basel immediately gave up on it when the drug did not produce the desired effects in animals. Thalidomide was then rediscovered by Grunenthal during their research into glutamic acid, where it was produced as a byproduct. Grunenthal was founded by Hermann Wirtz Sr., a Nazi party member and an advocate of racial hygiene and eugenics. The company was set up in 1946 in the wake of World War II. Originally a soap company, they were looking into various avenues for their revenue streams. As part of this, Wirtz put the word out for scientists with experience in antiviral research. With the war over and concentration camps closed, there were a few unemployed and, most importantly, unimprisoned Nazi scientists lingering around. Wirtz saw this as an opportunity to gain some valuable scientific experience for his fledgling company. He hired a handful of scientists who had committed multiple crimes against many poor souls in concentration camps. This new team would be headed by Dr. Heinrich Müchter, who had a blood-soaked resume and had conducted numerous experiments on prisoners in the Buchenwald concentration camp during the Nazi reign. Müchter had narrowly avoided justice from a Polish war crimes court by fleeing back to Germany and into the open arms of Wirtz. Well, needless to say, Grunenthal had a fascist's dream team of Nazi scientists. Wirtz put them to work, and this brings us back to the 1950s. During testing, scientists at Grunenthal discovered that thalidomide worked as a sedative on humans. In 1956, it was introduced under the name Contergan. Initially, it was marketed to epilepsy sufferers, but this market was pretty small. It was later discovered that the drug also had the benefit of being an effective antiemetic, meaning that it could reduce or stop nausea and vomiting, something that pregnant women often experience, known as morning sickness. Grunenthal seized the opportunity and quickly began promoting thalidomide to pregnant women as an effective and safe treatment for morning sickness. Although pregnant women became the target for Contergan marketing, tests on the effects of the drug on unborn life were not undertaken. Although this seems like a terrible decision today, back in the 1950s it wasn't even considered necessary for any medication testing. This was due to the conventional knowledge at the time that anything taken by a pregnant woman could not pass across the placental barrier. The Grunenthal scientists did perform tests on mice and found that unlike with barbiturates, it was virtually impossible to give the mice a lethal dose of thalidomide. It was also later discovered that rodents were actually largely insensitive to thalidomide, unlike other primates and animals, and therefore did not show many of the side effects and congenital anomalies that would later be observed in the children of pregnant mothers. Towards the end of the 50s, Contergan became one of the best-selling sedatives in Germany. It was cheap and accessible without a prescription, but the product wouldn't be confined to just Germany. Under license, thalidomide was produced internationally and sold. 14 pharmaceutical companies sold the product in 46 countries under 37 different product names. With the money rolling into Grunenthal, the company must have been loving the financial boom. By the end of the 1950s, roughly 14 tons of thalidomide were being sold per year. During the same time in the medical communities of the countries where thalidomide had been sold, a number of people started to develop peripheral neuritis. Then came a spike in miscarriages, stillbirths, and children born with birth defects. The first baby affected by thalidomide was born in December 1956 to an employee of the Grunenthal Pharmaceutical Company. But the link between the drug and birth deformities proved a tough issue to crack. In West Germany, in November 1961, a doctor by the name of Wedekind Lenz started to suspect the connection between thalidomide and birth defects. But Lenz wouldn't be the only concern for the drug, and this time it would come from outside Germany's borders. An Australian midwife's sister, Pat Sparrow, began to notice a worrying trend: children born with limb defects. This troubling pattern emerged after Dr. William McBride started prescribing thalidomide to mothers at the Crown Street Hospital in Sydney. Sparrow expressed her concerns to Dr. McBride, but initially, he didn't see any cause for alarm. However, upon re-evaluation, McBride wrote a short letter to the medical community, warning them about the sudden increase in birth deformities linked to thalidomide use. Medical reviewer for the US FDA, Frances Kathleen Oldham Kelsey, had thalidomide come across her desk in 1960, pretty late in the game. Because of this timing, rumors about the drug from Europe had already made their way to America. She refused to authorize the drug in lieu of further studies into reported cases of peripheral neuritis. In addition, she requested proof that the drug wouldn't cause damage to any unborn fetuses. US pharmaceutical companies, smelling the rain of money, pressured her to approve the drug, but she did not crumble under the pressure. In turn, she saved thousands of children from developing severe health issues. As a result, in 1962, Kelsey was awarded the President's Award for Distinguished Federal Civilian Service by President John F. Kennedy. Thalidomide was eventually banned in most countries in 1962, after it became difficult, or rather impossible, to ignore the devastating effects it had on the babies of pregnant mothers. In 1968, the Grunenthal Pharmaceutical Company was brought to trial for its role in the thalidomide disaster. In the end, however, no one was found guilty of any misconduct, but the scandal came with a silver lining. The thalidomide scandal forced governments around the world to enact stringent testing protocols before a drug could hit the market. It would take more than 50 years for Grunenthal to accept responsibility for the thalidomide disaster, finally offering an apology to the survivors of this tragedy. Repeated experiments showed that the drug could inflict damage on a fetus in a very short window during early pregnancy, just the first 42 days. During this period, pregnant women would most likely suffer from morning sickness, and taking this medical pill became an unfortunate disaster. We now believe that thalidomide acts as a teratogen, preventing angiogenesis in the fetus, a process whereby new blood vessels emerge from pre-existing ones. Using chicken embryos as an animal model, scientists observed that blood vessels were destroyed within 1 hour when exposed to thalidomide. Blood vessels are essential for healthy embryonic development, supplying both oxygen and nutrients to the rapidly growing fetus. Undermining that blood supply has the potential to lead to developmental defects. It was also discovered that there were actually 2 versions of the chiral thalidomide molecules, called enantiomers, which are made up of all the same parts but arranged differently. And because different receptors and enzymes inside your body react with molecules in very specific ways, the fact that enantiomers are mirror images means that they might react to things totally differently. In the case of thalidomide, scientists discovered that the R enantiomer, the clockwise enantiomer, helped with morning sickness, but the S enantiomer, the counterclockwise enantiomer, caused those severe birth defects. Methamphetamine is among the most well-known, or perhaps infamous, examples of how 2 enantiomers impact the human body. Its R form is widely identified with the name and is the illegal substance. The S enantiomer is widely available in vapor inhalers and is frequently supplied over the counter as a vasodilator. However, the vapor inhaler you recently purchased from the drugstore isn't loaded with a hazardous substance because there will never be psychoactivity in the S form. After researchers discovered that only the S version of thalidomide caused birth defects, they thought about isolating the R enantiomer so they could continue to use it to treat morning sickness. But it turns out that thalidomide's R enantiomer can actually switch to the S version while inside the human body, meaning that even if they'd isolated 100% pure R thalidomide, it still wouldn't be safe for pregnant women. Needless to say, the damage caused by the drug has traumatized society. The drug would never completely fall out of use, though. In 1964, it was discovered in Israel to have benefits in the treatment of inflammation associated with Hansen's disease, commonly known as leprosy. Also, in 1999, thalidomide was found to be of use in the treatment of certain cancers, such as multiple myeloma. The FDA, this time around, would license the drug, but only under very strict circumstances. There you have it, folks. The tragic story of thalidomide. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching. A like and a subscribe would make my day. Until next time.